Good morning, everybody, and welcome back to the Stokastic NHL Strategy Show, sponsored by BetMGM. It is early Saturday morning. I appreciate all you guys joining us at this hour. Joining me is my co-host Sub-Zero. I forgot my costume. Maybe I'll give you some Halloween stuff a little later. How you doing today?
Yeah, I'm not doing too bad. I can't wear that mask through the entire show. It's just one of those really dense rubber mask where it's on for 3 seconds and the condensation's already in your eyes, but doing good. Halloween weekend. Halloween's in a couple days. Nice little Saturday morning. Pretty big slate here tonight. Lots to talk about from last night as well. I mean, we should just jump right into last night's slate. I got crushed. You said you didn't do that well either. I did see in our Discord, though, we did have I think we had a late slate winner from Asim, took down the hip check in the late slate. So congrats to him. Colorado, New Jersey, man, what happened? I watched that game too. It looked like a defensive battle between two between two versions of the 2018-19 New York Islanders and not two high-powered offenses that we're used to. I don't know what happened there.
Yeah, and this is a good example of why Sith Lords don't play DFS, because if they handle an absolutes, what we talked about yesterday didn't really happen. Like, we were expecting Colorado to be high scoring. We were expecting Pittsburgh to be high scoring. What should happen don't sometimes, as the great Buddha man says.
Well, it's funny. The Islanders would go into Carolina and just beat the brakes off them last night, because we actually brought that up in yesterday's show. There was a game like that last season with Columbus going into Carolina. Carolina, massive favorite, cup contender and all that. Columbus was on a big slide, and they went in and just pounded them 6-1 or 7-1. And that's just hockey, man. That's the way it goes some nights.
Yeah. We did talk about liking Vancouver too. They did well last night, at least, compared to most of the lines we talked about. That's going to happen. We're on almost every day. Most of the stuff we say is going to be wrong. You know what I mean?
Most lines don't go off on a given night. That's the whole point. And that's why people play 20 max or 150. And it's, the frustration of playing single entry or 3 max sometimes as well. But
we're here every day giving you the best advice and analysis that we can. We're not always going to be right. And last night was one of those nights, but we're here. We'll take responsibility for that. And we'll be back today, giving you our best. And we have a 9-gamer tonight. Pretty good slate. Lots of high road totals. One very high home total. It's an interesting slate. But before we get into it, give us a like and subscribe so you can keep up with all of our shows. DFS offers, giveaways, and much more. Once you subscribe, hit that notification button to get alerts when our shows go live. Don't forget, almost all of our content is available in podcast form on the platform of your choice, except for the Live Before Locks. Help us out by leaving a 5-star review. Obviously, I'm a broken record with this, but it helps us out a lot. It helps you guys because it helps us give you free content like this on the regular. So let's jump into this 9-gamer. First game of the night, we have the Chicago Blackhawks, after going nuts the other night and us trash talking Domi, of course, are the first game of the night tonight. So salt in the open wound. Chicago Blackhawks at the 2.9 total heading into Buffalo. The Sabres have a 3.8. Like, come on, this is just a festival right out of the gate. Arvid Soderblom is confirmed for the Blackhawks, and that might not be a name you recognize. However, he is one of their top prospects. They're expecting him to be the goalie of the future. Again, with goalies, it's kind of just like picking something out of a bag. You just don't know what you're going to get, but he does have the skills. It's just a matter if it translates. Craig Anderson probable for the Sabres. Man, like, we don't have an ownership run yet, but Hawks won super cheap. Sabres won fairly cheap compared to what they've been at times this early in the season. Rasmus Dahlin up to 7,800. That's a circus, but unfortunately, there is stuff on both sides that I like here.
Yeah, I'm just going to start right away with the Buffalo top line. Obviously, it's been kind of a rough start for some of them. I know Jeff Skinner scored in their last game, but we talked about how Skinner really wasn't taking a ton of shots. Tage Thompson had 37 goals, I think, last year. Has only one so far this season, but he is managing over 3 shots per game. So it's not like they're not getting their chances, right? It's just sometimes there's maybe too many shots going to Alex Tuck, which is probably why you're seeing an inflated price compared to what Jeff Skinner is, or compared to, even what Tage Thompson is. So they've actually been playing well offensively. They just haven't been finishing their chances. 3.6 expected goals for per 60 minutes this year, only 2.3 actual goals scored. That's kind of an issue. That's been an issue for Tage Thompson for most of his career, other than last season. Like, that was the one thing that kind of indicated a breakout could be coming, was that he was starting to shoot a lot in low minutes and in lower slots in the lineup. Now that he's on the top line, or has been on for over a full season now, it's the finishing problem. It's, can they actually finish the chances that they do get? I mean, I do like their chances against that Chicago second line here tonight. The Chicago second line got mixed up a little bit in their last game. They moved Jujhar Khaira off and moved Philip Kurashev up. I know it's bad news for your buddy Khaira, but I looked at that Chicago game. Remember, they were at home to Edmonton, and it was kind of a back and forth, high scoring game most of the time. Chicago's had, I think, 5 forwards not play at all in the final 6 or 7 minutes. Like, it was just their top guys, and it didn't include Khaira. So I think Kurashev makes that line a little bit better defensively if he stays there. But, below water, they have trouble generating offense. And if you're not generating offense, that means you're probably playing defense. And if they give up too many chances to this Buffalo top line, I really do like them here tonight in this particular matchup. So I'm back in on Buffalo 1, especially where, the prices are very reasonable. Thompson is still only 5,500 over on FanDuel. Jeff Skinner's under 5K on FanDuel. I imagine they're going to carry a lot of ownership because it is the Chicago matchup. But I do like Buffalo 1 here. As for the rest of the Buffalo lines, I still don't know why they're sitting Rasmus Asplund. I think he's probably one of their 4 or 5 best forwards, certainly one of their best two-way forwards. And Casey Middlestad's numbers without Cousins or Asplund, absolutely awful. 4.4 expected goals against going back to last season. The problem is they send them out against a lot of the depth from Chicago, and you're not going to sit here and play Jason Dickinson or Sam Lafferty or something like that. So I'm probably out on Chicago 1. I don't have a problem necessarily playing. I know it feels bad to say that again. I don't have a problem playing them kind of in a nutshell, especially where Craig Anderson's starting. Like, I know Craig Anderson is a nice story, playing into his 40s back in Buffalo and all that stuff. But he just hasn't been good with the Sabres. You know what I mean? He's had a few good games. Any goalie can have good games. We're just talking on a consistent basis. So because of that, no problem going back to Chicago, one. But the Blackhawks take a ton of penalties. Second by time shorthanded on the season. They only have a mid-range penalty kill. The Buffalo power play isn't great, but I think they're going to get a lot of chances in this game against the rookie goalie. I like Buffalo one the most in this contest.
Yeah, I was smiling about you saying you're not going to be on Chicago one, because I don't think I will be either. And it's a case of like, why would I hop back on this train now after they've had their big game? It just feels like you're chasing a little bit, but I completely understand if you want to play them. This is a very, very good matchup. I do like Buffalo one as well. Tuck at 6,900. Like, I think it's a fine price, but he should not be that high compared to the other guys on the line. Like, if all those guys are in the 6,000s and that line was churning like they normally did, I would say that's fine. But like, if they funnel more shots into Skinner, Tuck's price is going to come down a little bit. Skinner's price is going to go up a little bit.
I mean, no matter home or road, I don't think there should ever really be a case where Alex Tuck is more expensive than Patrick Kane. You know what I mean? Yeah. So that's why, like, a Tuck, I think he is overpriced, but the line is still good.
Yeah. I mean, that ended up being the Eichel trade is looking pretty good for the Sabres. Alex Tuck is a nice player, but 6,900 remains to be seen. On the blue line, Rasmus Dahlin, 7,800. That is crazy. Jacob Bryson min price is fine. Owen Power 3,800 is okay. On the Hawk side, Seth Jones, if you're stacking Chicago one, even as a one-off, I think he's fine. Jake McCabe 3K interests me. I wish Jack Johnson. I can't believe I just said that. I wish Jack Johnson was like 32-ish, but at 4,100, it seems a bit expensive for his skill set.
Yeah, I think Jacob Bryson might be one of the punts of the day, like the Stone Min punts. He got moved up to the top pair with Rasmus Dahlin. They tried Owen Power there in the last game. Didn't really work out, needless to say, losing at home to Montreal. So they moved Jacob Bryson to the top pair. Maybe he gets some more minutes. So if you need a 2,500 defenseman on DK, don't mind him. Connor Murphy, like, he's blocking a lot, which makes him, kind of playable on DraftKings, but, that mid-4s range. And the way they run their D, it's like Seth Jones plays 25 to 30 minutes, and then everybody else is under 20. So does Buffalo generate enough where you can rely on Murphy for a block bonus and then probably an assist just to reach value? I think he's probably too expensive. So I think Bryson's my favorite defenseman here, just considering all the costs.
Yeah, the pun of the day just reminded me of Dumb and Dumber. What's the soup du jour?
Jacob Bryson, I'll have it.
Yeah. Anyway, Kermit the Frog here to introduce the next game. We have the Minnesota Wild with a 3.7 total. Heading into Detroit, the Wings have a 3.0 total. All right. Yeah, I mean, like, I'm jacked up on so much energy right now. This could be a wild show. Anyway, it's probably going to be Marc-Andre Fleury against Nedeljkovic. They're unconfirmed, but we'll see. It could be, different goalies, but as of now,
but
what was that?
They could go to Husso, but I honestly think you should probably look at Husso and Nedeljkovic as pretty interchangeable goalies.
Yeah, it could be 50. Like, I think they're 1A, 1B for the Wings. Anyway, Larkin, very expensive. Kubalik with Perron, like, that line's really expensive. And the problem is, like, the Wings don't send out their top line against top line. So, like, I'm worried that Larkin may see some Joel Eriksson-ek here. That being said, the Wild defensively is still not great. I don't know if I want to pay 18 and change for the Wings top line here. I think I would rather just go back to the Wild top line, maybe some Boldy. What are you thinking?
So I think we have to mention there's just a lot of injuries and suspensions and whatnot on the Detroit side. Like, Larkin took a maintenance day yesterday in practice. Now, they said they hope he can play tonight, but I don't like hearing maintenance day and then hope he can play, or, considered probable or possible for today. Like, Larkin might be out here. Even if he's in, Michael Rasmussen is suspended. Oscar Sundqvist is injured. Tyler Bertuzzi is injured. Robbie Fabry is injured. And Jacob Vrana is in the player assistance program. If Larkin's out, they could have 6 of their top 9 forwards missing in this game. Even if Larkin is back, they could have 5 of their top 9 forwards. They will have 5 of their top 9 forwards missing from this game. Like we've talked about how they kind of replenished and finally gave themselves some forward depth in the offseason. And all it took was like 2 weeks of game action for all that forward depth to completely disappear. So as we sit here right now, it's kind of tough to say exactly what to play on the Detroit side, because if Larkin's out, it changes everything about that team, right? Because then all of a sudden you have a $3,000 on DraftKings, at least, Andrew Kopp moving to the top line and probably playing like 22 minutes or something here tonight.
Pia Suter probably moves up into the top 6 as well. He's
right. And then the second line probably becomes unplayable, because then you're looking at like Zadina, like Suter, and like Raymond or Soderblom or something like that, right? So it's hard to. I'm assuming Larkin is in. Like sometimes when a guy takes a maintenance day, they are injured, but usually like they're fine to play. So assuming Larkin is in, him and Perron, they have this weird thing going on where they're not generating a lot, but they're finishing a lot, and that's kind of been the hallmark of Perron for the last few years. Is like back in St. Louis, they didn't have super strong expected goals numbers, but they always finished. Like I think it was just kind of the way they played offensively. But 3.3 expected goals against kind of speaks for itself for how tough they've been, or how bad they've been defensively. Sorry, Larkin, and to further that point, Dylan Larkin's shot rate down, but his expected goals rate is up on his shots, but it's all driven from the power play. And that's the one thing I kind of expected David Perron to help with in Detroit, and that is the power play. And Dylan Larkin's certainly getting a lot of better looks on it. Minnesota takes a ton of penalties as well, top 5 by time shorthanded per game, and bottom 5, I think bottom 6 by expected goals against per 60 minutes on the PK. So maybe the Detroit power play, if Larkin is in, can get there tonight. I don't imagine there's going to be much ownership, because you're right, this pricing is really, really high. The total's fine at 3.0, but that's not a super high home total, right? I guess we just assume if they do score, it would all come from the top line, maybe the second line. I would also note Lucas Raymond moved back to the top power play unit. So he's a pretty cheap option on the second line. So if you don't want to pay in the mid 5s for a Kubalik, you can probably save $1,000 and just add Lucas Raymond instead to a top power play stack. So I think that's what I like here from Detroit, is assuming Larkin's in, is some sort of power play stack. You can add Philip Hronek on the blue line if you want or not, but I think that's where Detroit kind of makes their hay in this game. If they do score a few goals, I think it's because the power play gets there. On the Minnesota side, I really don't see much that can slow down that Minnesota top line. Like the Detroit second line with Andrew Kopp is struggling defensively this year. I think injuries play a part of that. Having Joe Veleno or Adam Ernie on that second line certainly isn't going to help a ton, depending who's in the lineup. But 4.0 expected goals against in their 90 minutes so far this year. Just a really, really bad mark defensively. They're going to get that Minnesota top line. The Minnesota top line, obviously, always in play for us. The Detroit actually does have a pretty good penalty kill so far on the season. So that would be the one thing kind of keeping me away from Minnesota, is like they're struggling a lot at 5-on-5. They're just really making hay on the power play. If they only get like 2 or 3 penalty kill or power play opportunities against a pretty good Detroit penalty kill, I really don't like their chances here tonight. So just right out of the gate, I'll say Detroit power play is my favorite thing in this game. If you want to get, kind of cheap, you can do like a Boldy Foligno 2-man. What I will say is Freddie Gaudreau has made that Kaprizov Zuccarello top line much better defensively. And I think that's kind of something that we, more or less expected with them. So it does make, the second and third lines from Detroit, the guys that will see that Minnesota top line, just, completely out of play for me. So again, Detroit power play, maybe some Boldy and, Foligno or Boldy and Rossi 2-mans. That's it for me from the forwards.
Yeah, this game's kind of a mess. We'll have to wait and see if Larkin's in. That will change a whole bunch, but I am on the Minnesota side here. Moving to the blue lines, Philip Hronek's okay, 4,400. I guess more Cedar, 5,900 seems a bit expensive, not being on the top power play. Ben Sherratt, same deal. On the Minnesota side, Kalen Addison up to 4K. I still think that's a fine price. Jonas Brodin down to 2,700 is an interesting play for me. If you want to punt, I think he's fine. Middleton's a fine punt. You want to spend up for Spurgeon, I think that's fine as well.
Yeah, like Brodin's fine because of his price. He's getting pretty uneven ice time. Like you'll see him, in the teens, and you'll see him at 21, 22, which kind of makes him the perfect tournament play in that sense. He's coming off a decent game, and I wonder about ownership. For me, Jared Spurgeon's the interesting name because it's only 7 games, but his blocks per 60 minutes, way up from what he's ever done in his career, like 50% higher than his next closest season on a per 60 basis. I wonder if it's like he's not running the power play anymore, so he figures he has to try to find a different way to contribute to the team defensively or whatever. It is a small sample, but he can score. He's a good puck mover. He'll play, 22, 23 minutes, can block some shots. Like, I think he's, where he's only a couple $100 more expensive than Connor Murphy. I think he's one of the guys in that mid-4s range that I would target if I have that amount of salary left here tonight on DraftKings.
I agree there. We have a we have a super chat that I'll put up on the screen from M Haas 17. He says, any Canadiens of the Montreal persuasion tonight? Thank you for the super chat. Your Blues hate is incredible for being a Blues fan. I will say that Montreal's coming up in 2 games. We'll break that down. I will say the Blues have the biggest total of the night. So Canadiens don't have a very, their road total's fine. So we'll get to that game in a second. But man, spending $2.99 to bash your Blues is quite a scene in Niehaus.
I mean, I think that's the sign of a true fan, right? You just kind of have to keep digging your hole and just keep beating yourself over the head with how bad the team is. And then if they do well, you're pleasantly surprised. I'm a long-standing Montreal fan, so I'm very well aware of cheering for very bad teams.
Yeah, we'll get to that game in a couple minutes. But first, let's get to the next game. Carolina Hurricanes with a 3.8 road total going into Philadelphia. The Carter Hearts have a 2.9 total. Carolina played last night. How is Carolina on the road again?
I'd be so mad if I were them. Like a 5 or 6 game road trip, gone for 2 weeks, and then you come home and then you're going right to Philly, boy.
Back to back on the road after getting their brains beat in with the 3.8 total. Freddie played last night, so it's probably going to be Antti Ranta. I would be shocked if it wasn't Carter Hart. Carolina, probably the same lines. Philadelphia going with Farabee, Hayes, Konechny, Noah Cates, Lawton, Tippett. I mean, I don't know what to do with this Canes total. It's massive. Carter Hart's been incredible to start this season. Carolina back to back on the road. I would imagine that Carolina doesn't have much ownership here. Maybe you go back to them. And as far as the Flyer side, maybe the top line. But that's really about it. What are you seeing?
Yeah, like for the Flyers, it's pretty much always top line or bust for a number of reasons. I mean, one, they play heavy minutes. You'll see these guys sometimes, in the 20, 21, 22 minute mark, 2 out of 3 on the top power play unit. They're reasonably priced, I think. Like, I don't think they're getting too excessive. And Travis Konechny, I think, is kind of worth noting here. 6,100 tonight over on DraftKings, 6,900 on FanDuel. His price is creeping up, but I notice his power play shooting is through the roof this year, considerably higher than what he typically does. So he's really starting to, kind of find himself on the power play after the Flyers power play has struggled for a while. And honestly, you got to give a bit of credit, I think, to Tony DeAngelo there. Like, it seems like wherever that guy goes, maybe his teammates don't like him, but he certainly helps them score on the power play. So, I don't really have a problem going to Philly 1 here tonight. The problem is like Carolina didn't necessarily play that bad last night. I think they kind of played an even game. It was just, you have Ilya Sorokin going up against you. Sometimes those things happen. I'll also mention for Carolina, they changed up their lines late in the game last night. They moved Jordan Martinook to the top line with Sebastian Aho instead of Jarvis, and then moved Teuvo Teravainen down to the third line. So that would really mix things up for me here. Like, Aho and Martinook actually have some good numbers together going back a couple years, controlling about 56%, 57% of the expected goals when they're on the ice. But Martinook has always had a problem finishing, and he's not really a great playmaker. So I think it could hurt the offensive upside of that line if he's there. We're just going to have to wait and see what they say when warmups roll around. I think I would be much more tempted to go down to that Carolina second line, Necas and Svechnikov. Necas looked great again last night. Just want to say that. They've been really, really good this year. 3.0 expected goals generated in 85 minutes together, 4.1 actual goals. Svechnikov always shoots the puck a fair bit. Even Necas, up to 2.5 shots a game is, considerably better than what he was doing last year. So I think I like Carolina too, going into that Philly second line, because that Philly second line doesn't strike me as if it'll be pretty good. Like Noah Cates and Owen Tippett just haven't, they've been playing fine offensively. The defense has been about average. Honestly, it's just back-to-back on the road on a 9-game slate. We still don't have lineup combinations. Philly doesn't draw a lot of power plays, is kind of the problem with going to their top line, and Carolina typically has a very good penalty kill. So I think this is a game where if I'm 1 to 3 maxing, I'm looking for one-offs, like one off Martin Necas, one off Joel Farabee, one off Travis Konechny. I even think you can go back to Tony DeAngelo in this matchup, even though Carolina does have a pretty good penalty kill. It is Antti Raanta in net instead. But I think this is a game where I'm not full stacking any of the lines. I'm just more looking to fill it in as one-off forwards, one-off wingers somewhere.
I agree. And let's get to that blue line. On the Flyer side, yeah, Tony DeAngelo, 6,600 may seem overpriced for Tony DeAngelo, but I think he's fine as a one-off in this system. As far as anyone else on the Flyers, probably not. On the Carolina side, I think Burns is fine. I think Brady Shea is fine. Brett Pesce is fine. But that's really about it.
I like how you snuck that in there. Burns finally scored last night. Got the shot bonus too. It was a nice night for him. I think Brett Pesce, particularly over on FanDuel, is fine, where he's only 4,200. Ivan Provorov has been putting up massive peripherals so far this season, which, maybe that's the Tortorella effect. Like Tortorella is telling him, listen, if you don't get 2 block shots per game, I'm playing you 17 minutes a night or something like that. He's also shooting the puck a fair bit. So I think this might be, if you're worried about the Carolina penalty kill and all that, and you don't want to go to a high-priced DeAngelo, I think Provorov could make a really low-owned pivot on DraftKings particularly, just because, the peripherals are really valued there. So if you don't want to play DeAngelo or you don't want to play Seth Jones or something like that, I think Provorov makes a nice low-owned option here tonight.
For sure.
Hi, Harry Carey here to tell you about a BetMGM NBA no-brainer promo. Cubs win. If you bet $10, you win $200 if any team hits a three-pointer. It's a no-brainer. Michael, what do you think? This offer is available in all states except New York, Pennsylvania, Mississippi, and Ontario. It must be a pregame money line bet. It's basically free money from the sports books, so take advantage of it. Hi, Michael. If you were a hot dog, would you eat yourself? I know I would. I'd smother myself in mustard and ketchup and take a bite. Cubs win.
I don't know how you kept a straight face doing that the entire time. Oh, I was waiting for this. Is the moon made of spare ribs?
Hi. Hey. If the moon was made of cheese, would you take a bite? I would. Anyway, let's move on to the next game of the night. We have the Montreal Canadiens with a 2.5 total heading into St. Louis. The Blues have the biggest total of the night. They have a 4.2 total. I will say it's a lot easier to keep a straight face when I do that stuff because I have to bring up the run sheet and I can't see your reaction live.
Okay.
It helps a lot. Wow, I am jacked up right now. Anyway, probably going to be Jake Allen, probably going to be Jake Binnington. I don't know if Pavel Buchnevich is going to be back. The 4.2 total would make some sense if he was back in. Jake Neighbors up on the top line with Shannon O'Reilly. So, like, if Buchnevich is back in, Buchnevich, Thomas Tarasenko would definitely interest me. Kyrou, Thomas Tarasenko also interests me. Don't like that Kyrou is not on the power play, either unit. He might be on the second unit, but the second line for the Blues, very interesting to me. Also, don't mind going back to the Montreal top line here. I know they don't have a large road total, but like they're fully correlated. Mike Hoffman does his work on the power play. I think that's fine. You can also go to the second line for the Canadiens if you want some cheap power play here with like Monahan and Drouin. What are you thinking?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure Kyrou jumped to the top power play in the last game. I was wondering if that hurt your throat or not. So Kyrou, Thomas Tarasenko, assuming they're together again in this game, will all be on the same power play together. I was just looking at our early projections here for this game, and I'll bring it up on screen here. Thomas, Kyrou, Tarasenko in that game on DraftKings projected for like 43 points combined, which is a massive, massive number. Obviously, the implied goal total factors into that, but normally you see top lines at home, they'll be, anywhere from like 30 to 38 points. Like being at like 42, 43, 44 points is a massive, massive number. There's obviously going to be a lot of ownership on that trio here tonight. Don't really have a problem using them. They've been really good in their minutes together going back to last year. 3 expected goals generated per 60 minutes, 4.2 actual goals. Kyrou, his season didn't really go underrated last year, but he was really, really good last season. And he's one of those dual threat guys like Kaprizov. I don't want to say he is as good as Kaprizov, but he's a guy that at the end of the season, you can see him with 30 to 35 goals and 45 to 50 assists. Like he's both a scorer and a playmaker. And I think that's what they need on that line without Buchnevich there. Because, Tarasenko's a goal scorer, Thomas is a playmaker, and now Kyrou brings a little bit of both. And they're going to get the second and third line matchups from Montreal. And those matchups really, they shouldn't be super tough, but Kirby Dach and Sean Monahan have actually played pretty well together, at least defensively this year. Only 1 expected goals against per 60 minutes in their 40 minutes together. So pretty good defensively, at least so far. And Montreal doesn't take a lot of penalties. Like neither team takes a lot of penalties, actually. Both in the bottom 10 by time shorthanded and power play opportunities for themselves as well. So there may not be a lot of special teams in this game, which worries me. The only thing with St. Louis too, like it is a pretty good matchup. They're very reasonably priced. I think they're 16.7K, at least over on DraftKings. The only problem is like I expect massive ownership here tonight. Like I wouldn't be surprised when we do our top stacks run if they come in at like 20%. You know what I mean? So you mentioned Montreal won. They're going to see the Ryan O'Reilly line. Ryan O'Reilly with Braden Shen and without David Perron, not very good going back to last season. Like Shen's defensive numbers have really fallen off over the last few years. 3.2 expected goals against in 135 minutes together. 4.4 actual goals against.
That's atrocious for him.
Yeah. I don't think they're going to keep allowing 4.4 per 60, but when you're allowing 3.2, 3.5 isn't out of the realm of possibility. So that Montreal top line of Suzuki, Caulfield, and Hoffman, not bad offensively in their sample together. 85 minutes, 2.9 expected goals for per 60 minutes, which is right around what the St. Louis line generates that we just talked about. Caulfield and Suzuki probably going to play heavy minutes. I think Montreal makes a decent contrarian option here on this slate. But it is St. Louis too that I like the most out of this game. It's just there's going to be a ton of ownership.
Yeah, Ryan O'Reilly, maybe it's his wingers because, Shen's defensive game has fallen off. Jake from State Farm's a rookie. So, I don't know. O'Reilly's getting up there for hockey age anyway, so maybe he's started to fall off. We saw it last year. His offensive stats fell off a cliff early in the season. Now he's starting to fade defensively. So, yeah, I think going back to Montreal 1 is perfectly fine here. I wish Mike Hoffman was on the top power play, but not on that line. Like, I wish it was Monahan or even like Gallagher or Josh Anderson or even Drouin. But like, I guess you could throw in Hoffman. He's 3,100 top power play. But yeah, Montreal 1, St. Louis 2 for me. On the blue lines here, Colton Parayko. I always struggle with that name. I don't know why. 4K. He's starting to shoot the puck more. He's actually getting some power play time, which is nice. Krug is fine. Justin Falk getting up there at 6,100 is a bit pricey, and he doesn't really correlate with Blues too. On the Montreal side, going to be Jordan Harris again. That's probably about it.
Yeah, I would say Caden Gooley over on FanDuel. I think he's 3,700 on FanDuel is just fine. Not really a spot where I'm going for a defenseman. Just one final thing to mention is Montreal went 5 forwards on the power play last game. And Mike Hoffman was on the top power play with them, along with Sean Monahan and Jonathan Drouin. Monahan and Drouin on the second unit or the second line together, so there's some power play correlation there. But the top line for Montreal, as long as they go back to 5 forwards on the power play, all perfectly correlated.
Yep. So let's move on to the next game of the night. Let's inhale that copium, Leafs fans. Toronto 3.6 total heading into Los Angeles. Our Kings have a 3.1 total. Goodness gracious, do the Kings suck defensively and in net, but the Leafs have been bad, at least from the scoring perspective. Maybe their macro stats look pretty good, but Mitch Marner, absolutely fraudulent to start the season. He's back in the doghouse for me. Gabriel Velarde moved up to the top line with Kempe and Kopitar. That is spicy. The Kings top line is so cheap and fully correlated. The second line, it remains the same. Now the third line is Carl Grundstrom, Blake Lizotte, Kevin Fiala. Like, maybe Byfield is back in the lineup because he was sick last game. Maybe we can get a Kaliev, Byfield, Fiala. That would be a nice third line. Granted, this wouldn't be the best matchup. The Leafs' best defensive lines are probably their bottom 6. So I kind of like that Kings top line. Velarde has been excellent to start this season. Unfortunately, oh no, they send out Deneau against Matthews, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so Kopitar will see that Tavares, Nylander, Kerfoot line. And with Kerfoot there, it is an absolute circus defensively. So I do like the Kings top line. We'll have to wait and see in ownership. Do we go back to Leafs 1? What do you think?
Well, I'm glad that Michael Bunting is back on the Toronto top line. I like why they put Alex Kerfoot there is just absolutely beyond me. I get like they're not scoring a ton, but they're 4.2 expected goals per 60 minutes for the Toronto top line in 80 minutes this season with Michael Bunting on the top line. It's just they're shooting 6.4%. I wonder, like, Matthews has been hitting a lot more. I think he's up over 3 hits per game. I don't know why he's doing this. Like, maybe they want him to add a different dimension to his game, but like, this guy's a 60 goal scorer. He doesn't need to be Alex Ovechkin. You know what I mean? But anyways, that's kind of what they're doing here. They're going up against Kings 2. Kings 2 has started to bring their game around a bit, at least offensively. Defensively, still at 3 expected goals against per 63.3 actual goals against per 60 minutes. But they are generating a lot more offensively, so maybe they can put a little bit of pressure on this Leafs top line. But Michael Bunting's down to 3,900. Mitch Marner, 6,500. Like, there were times last year where Bunting was in the mid-5s. Over on DraftKings. He's still there on FanDuel, so you're really not getting that much in savings on FD. But at least on DK, we saw Bunting in the mid-5s and, Marner in, close to the 8s or in the 8s. And we saw Matthews in the 9s at times. Like, there's a good chance this line is like $4,000 cheaper than like $3,000 cheaper than it would be, than it can be a month from now. That's kind of the situation where I like taking players. Matthews leads projections in this game for, any player by a significant amount. In fact, he leads projections for everybody here tonight on DraftKings by over 2 full points. That means he's over 10% ahead of everyone else. So maybe it's not a bad spot to go back to that Toronto one. Like, they're generating a ton. Eventually, this has to come through. And the Kings are 4th by time shorthanded this so far this season, with Toronto top 10 in power play opportunities. Like, the Leafs could get 4 or 5 power plays here tonight. I think this is just like it was in San Jose. And, Matthews scored a goal and had 7 shots. That's not a terrible night, even at his price. But I think this is a night to go back to Toronto one. So I do like Toronto one here. Kings one going against that Kerfoot Tavares line, like 3.5 goals against per 60 minutes in their 400 minutes together last year. Some of it driven by goaltending. I think Velarde can help that line in the short term, and Adrian Kempe's still shooting a lot. I just worry about a lot of ownership where they're perfectly correlated, and they're only like 13,000 and change on DraftKings. So I think the line I like most in this game is Toronto one. If you want to add in, they could get a lot of power play. So if you want to add in John Tavares instead of Bunting, or, William Nylander instead of Marner or something like that, I think that's perfectly fine. Toronto power play is what I like most in this game. I think you can go to Los Angeles one. I would just be worried about ownership.
Yeah, I like Los Angeles one. I'm worried about ownership as well. Gabriel Velarde absolutely deserves to be up there over Kevin Fiala right now. Fiala needs to start shooting the puck more. Unfortunately, I do agree. I think it's a Toronto one night. Like, the Kings defensively have been a mess. Their goaltending has been atrocious. If the Leafs can't break out against the Kings tonight, maybe they start tanking for Bedard. But no, they're not that bad. Like, they'll break out. Like, Matthews is kind of streaky. He scores goals in bunches, so once one goes in, it's gonna start raining here. Moving to the blue line, Doughty up to 5,100. I think that's still fine. Sean Dursey 4K also fine. On the Leaf side, Riley at 5,600 for some power play correlation is probably around the cheapest you'll get him this season. If not, I think Rasmus Sandin at 2,900.
Yeah, I was thinking Justin Hall, just because he might rack up some blocks. I noticed Morgan Riley, like, he's playing less than he has in quite a number of years, and he's shooting less than he has. So I wonder if his price isn't, just kind of fair for right now. But it is a great power play situation for Toronto. So I agree, like, he's perfectly usable here tonight. That's probably about it. Maybe Matt Roy on the Kings side if you want to get some blocks, but he's kind of in that Connor Murphy range where even on DraftKings you need more than a block bonus from him, and I don't like that pricing. But again, he's one of those mid-forward guys that's fine to use, just not running out to use him.
For sure. I was going to do this read as Edgar and Men in Black, but I've never done this read before, so we'll save it for another day. Make your best bets in 30 seconds or less with OddsShopper. With hundreds of bets featured daily, OddsShopper gives you the edge you need betting player props and game lines across all sports. With expected win percentages and ROIs included, OddsShopper features multiple projection methods which help you make the best bets available on the market. OddsShopper also features a parlay builder with optimized parlays and an arbitrage tool that identifies risk-free, guaranteed profit bets that you can make across sportsbooks. What are you waiting for? Click the link in the video description below to sign up for free with OddsShopper and start making smarter bets now. Also, if you follow me on Twitter, I have the Big Dog Plus Money prop of the night. I use OddsShopper and the Stokastic projections for that pick. So, like, if you're tailing me on those picks, you could do your own research with OddsShopper and the projections, and let's make some money. 4 games left. Let's continue. We have the Colorado Avs with a 3.2 total heading into Long Island, which is a miserable experience. The Islanders have a 2.9 total. Imagine it's going to be Georgiev, and it's probably going to be Varlamov. Now, both these teams are on a back-to-back. The Islanders flew home from Carolina. The Avs were in New Jersey. It is a 37-hour drive with traffic from New Jersey to Long Island. Man, the Avs looked bad last night. Islanders look pretty good. Both of these teams on a back-to-back. Fairly decent totals on both sides. We'll have to see if Nishushkin's in tonight. don't know. Like, the Avs won 11-7 last night, and Martin Kaut played like 6 minutes. So, like, their top guys were on the ice for so much. They're probably going to be a little bit tired. Islanders just aren't great defensively. It's not Sorokin and net, most likely. So I think going back to the Avs here makes some sense.
Yeah, that's exactly what I had in mind, especially with Semyon Varlamov and net for the Islanders. Sorokin's really separated himself over the last couple seasons from him. And over the last 2 years, Varlamov's allowing a half goal more per game than Sorokin. That's, over 25% more goals against. It's just a function of how good Sorokin is. And Varlamov's not awful, but he's, at best, like an average goalie at this point. I think you're right. Going back to the Colorado top line makes a lot of sense. Now, just a little bit of a note here with that Colorado top line. They did change their lines at the end of last game. Evan Rodriguez moved to the top line with Arturi Lehkonen moving down to the second line. And then Martin, like you said, Martin Kaut was just, pretty much sent to the press box after the second period. Those top guys are going to play a lot. I think Nathan MacKinnon played 25 minutes last night in a regulation game. Like, that's pretty absurd for a forward playing 60 minutes. With Evan Rodriguez up there, it makes the top line fairly inexpensive. Like, I think Rodriguez is $2,900 on DK. That brings the top line to like 18,004 or 18,500 if I'm doing the mental math right. Like, that's really cheap. And Rodriguez did stay on the top power play all game yesterday. Finished the game on the top line, played over 21 minutes, I think. So, like, I'm not wondering if just going to that Colorado top line with Rodriguez is fine. Now, we're going to have to wait until warmups because obviously with the back-to-back, we're not going to get morning morning skates from Colorado. But if he's on the top line, like 18K and change for that top line, going up against the Islanders. The Islanders' third line has been fine defensively, but league average. And if you're league average defensively against this Colorado top line with a downgrade in net, on what should be an under-owned top line for Colorado tonight, we don't have our runs yet. But, yeah, I'm going right back. I think Colorado won. Makes a lot of sense here. I also noticed Nathan MacKinnon has a projection like 80% higher than any Islander skater. It was just funny. I'll bring that up real quick on our earlier projections. MacKinnon at 18.7, the closest Islander. Brock Nelson at 10.5. That's just kind of the way that's going to go. So back in on Colorado 1. On the Islander side, I think Wahlstrom and Barzal makes some sense, especially with the way that Wahlstrom's shooting the puck. Like, he's top 10 in the NHL in shot attempts per 60 minutes, 90th percentile in individual expected goals. I think Wahlstrom scored again last night. So don't mind going back to them. I'm not a big fan of that Islanders second line with Nelson, Lee, and Beauvillier. I know Brock Nelson had a really good game last night. We kind of liked him, but I think it's just a function of they're not that cheap. Lee really isn't shooting. I think Nelson's fine, like if you want to one-off him or something like that. But I think more than anything in this game, it's the Colorado top line that I like, and maybe like a 2-minute Barzal, Wahlstrom. I hope Josh Bailey doesn't score again. He keeps making me look stupid.
Yeah, and the annoying thing now that the Wings aren't flexed to 7:30, the Islanders are flexed to 7:30, which means the Colorado lines are going to be post-lock news. So if Nishushkin's back and it's not Evan Rodriguez, you're going to have to make some swaps unless you leave Evan Rodriguez up there. Just be aware if you are using the Avs that you might need an expensive swap. But, this is a good spot. I do like Colorado 1 despite them being back-to-back on the road. Moving to the blue line, Cale Makar, 7,400. Much easier to fit if it is Erod on the top line. Other than that, you can go Taze. I think that's fine. On the Islander side, probably just Pelech for me, honestly. Like, you can play Dobson, but like, I don't want to spend 6,400 for Dobson tonight. I probably just get Pelech for the blocks.
Yeah, I agree with you. Pelech 3,200 probably makes the most sense. I saw Taves only played like 21 minutes last night, so maybe coming back from injury, they're backing off 26 minutes. They threw at him his first game out.
Yeah. So let's move on to the next game. Washington Caps with a 3.0 total. Going into Nashville, the Preds have a 3.2 total. I hate this game so much. Hate it. Probably Darcy Kemper, probably UC Saros. I can't stand the Caps lines. They're miserable for DFS. I want to give good analysis on the Cap side. I just can't do it. Like, maybe Strome Ovechkin's fine just because, the Predators penalty kill is pretty bad. It's going to be power play or bust for me on the Cap side. On the Predator side, I like the top line. Johansson looked decent. He scored with Forsberg and Duchesne. Forsberg's pricey, but he's always pricey. Duchesne's and Johansson are cheap. So probably Caps power play, Predators one for me. I don't know if you're seeing anything else different.
Yeah. What I will say is Nashville kind of changed up their lines a little bit last game. Cody Glass was playing there quite a bit. They did move their second and third lines around a little bit last game, but I'm not sure if we're full stacking the second and third lines from Nashville anyway. I'll start on the Washington side. I noticed Alex Ovechkin has a career low shot attempt rate at 5-on-5 so far this year. Whether it's been Kuznetsov or whether it's been Strome, they've really had trouble generating a 5-on-5 with Ovechkin on the ice. And I think that kind of makes a good matchup for that Predators top line. I worry about ownership because that's another line that's, in that 15K-ish range, which means those are the lines that tend to draw a lot of ownership, especially when, you're looking at a 3.2 total, which is reasonably high. But I'm fine going right back to Nashville 4 goals per 60 minutes in their 255 minutes together. They might not play a ton because they do spread out ice time amongst their forwards. But at 15K or whatever on DraftKings, I think that's perfectly acceptable. They're going to get that Ovechkin matchup. Strome and Ovechkin haven't been good defensively this year. Almost 3.5 goals against per 60 minutes, underwater by expected goal share. So I'm fine going back to Nashville 1. Nashville's penalty kill hasn't been very good this year, but UC Saros tends to make a fairly large difference. But they are tied for 10th in power play opportunities given to the opposing team. So I think like a one-off Ovechkin makes sense here, even at 7,500, even with a declining shot attempt rate of 5-on-5, because his power play shot rate is way up. I'm shooting a lot more on the power play. So I think one-off Ovechkin, even if you want two-man with Strome, is fine. But it's Nashville 1 I like the most. Trading Sissons and Jeannot is interesting here. They played like 15, 16 minutes in their last game. They're all really cheap. They're going to get the third and fourth lines from Washington. And Jeannot has a sky-high individual expected goals rate so far this year. Yeah. Maybe he can generate against some depth. So I don't mind Jeannot as a cheap one-off here tonight.
Yeah, he shoots the puck a ton. It's nice to see if you need a cheap one off there, get secondary power play time. Moving to the blue line, Roman Josi, also my big dog plus money prop of the night. I'm fine with him at 7,800. Other than that, not too much on the Pred side. On the Cap side, going to be Carlson for power play time. 7,100, that was a tough pill to swallow. I'd rather just play Josi. Dmitry Orlov, fine at 3,700.
Yeah, Yotsi's probably the only guy I really like in this game. If Dante Fabro can ever start playing more than 16 minutes, I would be interested in him. But other than Josi, this just isn't a game where I'm really digging for defensemen.
Yep. Don't forget to get your free $200 at MGM. Sign up using the link in the description. Get that free money from the sportsbooks. Do it. Do it, or Harry Carey will yell at you. 2 games left. We got about 5 minutes left. Battle of Alberta time. Edmonton with a 3.6 total going into Calgary. The Flames have a 3.1. First thing you notice is the Flames top line, very cheap. The other thing you notice, the pair of McDavid and Draisaitl up to 17.5, which is more expensive than Flames 1, which is actually nice because you just can't jam in those guys and be like, oh, I can also put in another power play stack with them. So you actually have to make a decision here. I think the Oilers top line's fine. Like, the Flames are a pretty good defensive team. They just haven't been great. I think for me, favorite line in this game might be Flames 2 on the Flames side anyway. Oilers power play, Flames 2. What are you seeing?
I'll mention the Flames top line here because they tend to take second and third line matchups. Now, Edmonton's third line, not bad defensively with Fogle and Puljujarvi there. Second line, not very good defensively. 3.0 expected goals against per 60 minutes so far this year. More than anything, it's that Edmonton is averaging 5 times shorthanded per game this year, and the Calgary power play has been really, really good. At least, Nazem Kadri, especially in the early portions of this season. So I think some sort of Calgary power play stack actually makes sense here tonight. Huberdeau, Kadri, and Anderson, or Toffoli, or Lindholm, Kadri, Anderson, or Toffoli, Huberdeau, Kadri, something like that. I think a Calgary power play stack makes the most sense. I do like Mangiapane as a one-off. He's shooting the puck a lot as well, and getting, there are nights he plays more than Jonathan Huberdeau. So don't mind Mangiapane as a one-off. Not sure I'm going to get to the Edmonton side here in this game. Calgary, pretty good defensive team, pretty good on the penalty kill as well. Third fewest expected goals against on the PK so far this season. They are taking a lot of penalties, so maybe that's the way Edmonton can get there. But, coin flip between Edmonton 1 and Toronto 1 here tonight. I'm taking Toronto.
Yep, let's quickly get to this last game of the night. We have the Pittsburgh Penguins, the 3.6 total, heading into Seattle. The Kraken have a 3 total. I will just say quickly, Penguins back-to-back on the road. If Jake Gensel's back, definitely interest in the Penguins top line. Otherwise, I'm not sure. I'll full stack, maybe take some one-offs here. On the Seattle side, I just wish their lines were a little bit more consistent, but I think there is a little bit to like on the Kraken side.
Yeah, just want to mention that Dan Heinen was moved back up to the top line last night in place of Rickard Rakell. So it could be Russ, Crosby, Heinen on the top line, but where this is a late game, you just won't know until the very end of the slate, which kind of sucks. So I think if you're going to do anything from Pittsburgh, it would probably probably one-offing guys. Like, I'm just worried about stacking something and being caught with a line that's not actually playing or something like that. So I think you can two-man like Crosby and Rust. I think you can two-man Crosby and Malkin or something like that. But I think it'd be like one-offing a Rakell, one-offing a Malkin, something along those lines. The Kraken have been good this year, but the goaltending remains, pretty bad. So that's what we're banking on here. On the Seattle side, I kind of like going back to Burakovsky, Wenberg, Bjorkstrand. They played, 18, 19 minutes in their last game, still generating a fair bit. Bjorkstrand at 4 shots per game on the season. Probably going to get second and third line matchups. So back to Wenberg, Bjorkstrand, Burakovsky for me.
Yep. Coming up right after us at the top of the hour, we have the NBA Strategy Show with Terry and Adam. Sorry we ran a little bit late, guys, but we will be wrapping it up now. Who do you like in the net?
Well, I guess I don't mind Ilya Samsonov for Toronto, and I honestly can't believe that I'm actually saying that. I think UC Saros mid-7s at home makes some sense as well. Maybe Marc-Andre Fleury against Detroit, but that's kind of shaky. I think the two guys I like the most, honestly, are Samsonov and Saros.
Samsonite? I was way off. Who you liking for your hat trick pick?
I got Nazem Kadri as my hat trick pick against the Oilers.
That is a spicy meatball. I'm going Gabe Vilardi.
All right. Gabe Vilardi, Nazem Kadri. I like it. Let's go.
So for producer Sim Cliffy, I'm your host, Josh Harris. We will see you early next week. We'll see you in Discord and on Twitter. Good luck tonight, everybody.
Happy Halloween.
Come